Hi, everybody. Basically, like I explained in my email, I am unable to go to class this week because I have to work. So I am recording my entire lecture here for both days in just one big video. But first, I want you to start by watching the video that is at this link. So if you go to salsa.net/u/13, you're going to see a 10-minute clip from a movie that was made in the early 90s called Apollo 13. And that movie was a movie that was made by Tom Hanks, who likes to make lots of historical movies. But he covered the whole story of the Apollo 13 mission. And as you hopefully know, back in the 1960s, the United States was in a space race with the Soviet Union. And, so we were both trying to better, each country was trying to better each other with better and better rockets. And the big main target was to get to the moon. Who could get to the moon first? And we won. We got to the moon in July of 1969. With Apollo 11 with Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, who walked on the surface of the moon. And then Apollo 12 came along and went to the moon. And then Apollo 13 was launched. However, on the way to the moon, Apollo 13 had a major explosion that occurred on the ship. The explosion was due to a defective stirring mechanism on the oxygen tanks. The ship carried big tanks of frozen oxygen and hydrogen that they used to generate both water and electricity to run the ship. And when one of the astronauts, Jack Swigert, went to stir the tanks, because they have to be stirred every now and then so it doesn't settle, a spark was created. And of course, oxygen is very flammable, of course, and it exploded. And it became a real huge international news story and a big problem to be able to get these guys back home. They obviously couldn't land on the moon, so the big mission was to get them back home. The scene I'm gonna have you watch after I'm finished here. The scene I'm gonna have you watch is the scene in the movie where the explosion happens. The commander of the mission was played by Tom Hanks, of course, and the astronaut's Jim Lovell, who's still alive today. He's an old guy, but he's still around. But Jim Lovell said that this recreation of the accident was pretty close to what happened. Pretty close, good description of how it really looked. But the reason I'm showing it to you is because the topic that we're covering in this particular chapter is self management, managing yourself, managing your emotions. And one of the amazing things about the astronauts in this, when they were going through this incident, is how calm they were. If you listen to the transmissions between Houston and the Apollo 13, that you really you can't tell that something horrible happened. They're just very calm and matter of fact. Now that's because these guys were test pilots and fighter pilots. They were trained to be very calm under pressure. But again, that's something that you can learn, right? That's something that you can learn. Maybe not to the extent that fighter pilots and test pilots do, but it is something that can be taught. But I just want you to see, what it looks like to be calm under life-threatening pressure. And also, the calmness was also shown in the Houston Mission Control by the leader, the head of Mission Control, Gene Kranz. You'll see him in this, portrayed in this movie clip as well. He was, calm, cool, and collected as well. So lots of good examples of self-management in this movie clip. So now what I want you to do is to go ahead and go to this URL salsa.net/u/13, and watch the video. It's about 10 minutes long. And then after you watch it, come back to this video. And we will continue on with the lecture. Okay, so hopefully you enjoyed that. It's a pretty good movie. So if you if you ever get a chance to watch it, please do. It's a very good movie. It's a good retelling of the whole Apollo 13 thing. And if you go onto YouTube and do a search for Apollo 13, there's lots of really cool videos on the whole accident and how they dealt with it and everything. But chapter 6 in our quest to learn about emotional intelligence covers self-management. Remember last time we talked about self-awareness. Now we're going to talk self-management. Self-management essentially has to do with your ability to manage and control your emotions. Okay, that's basically at a very high level what this is about. And in the process of learning self-management, there's lots of different types of techniques and skills that you can work on. So we're going to talk about all these different concepts step by step. Okay. So for the first concept I want to introduce is that concept called locus of control. Okay. Locus of control. And I think I mentioned this concept to you guys in an earlier lecture. I can't remember which one, but I did mention it to you earlier, but let's cover it again. So the word locus, it's a Latin word meaning location. So the location of control. In other words, what locus of control is where psychologically do you believe, do you have control? Do you feel like you have control? Do you feel that you internally control your life's destiny and what you do? Is it internal to you, or is what happens to you just the result of external stuff that you have no control over, right? So it's internal locus of control, meaning I control my destiny, my circumstances, versus external locus of control, meaning my destiny, my circumstances are controlled by forces that are completely beyond my control. Obviously, I hope it's obvious anyway. Internal locus of control is related to more healthy, resilient beliefs and outcomes, right? If you feel like you have control of your destiny, of your circumstances, then obviously that's much better than feeling that you have no control whatsoever, right? That you're just sort of like a victim of circumstances, right? Locus of control is a very important concept for a lot of reasons. It's because it's related to many different other things. Locus of control is related to depression. Obviously, people that have an external locus of control, who feel like they're not in control of anything, are much, much more prone to depression. That's one of the cardinal symptoms of depression, is the helplessness, right? Self-esteem. If you have low self-esteem, then you may feel like you don't have any control over what happens to you. And of course, our topic for today, self-management. Locus of control has a lot to do with self-management. So that's one area that you might want to think about a little bit is, where do you guys feel like your locus of control is? Do you feel that you have a good internal locus of control, that you can mostly control your life? Do you feel like you have mostly external locus of control, or probably you feel like you're in the middle somewhere, which is really the right place to be, right? Because, there are certain things that we can control and there are certain things we can't control, right? And part of life is figuring out what are those things that I can control and what are those things that I can't control, and to not worry about the things you can't control, right? If you can't control them, well, don't worry about them because it's not going to help. But if you can control them, worrying also doesn't help. Rather, what helps is to control them, to do the best you can to control them. So basically, that's really one of the first areas that you want to hit in terms of like dealing with self-management, because if you have an extra, if you're a person that has the type of personality that is a very much has an external locus of control, you're going to have a lot more work to do for self-management than somebody who has an internal locus of control. Okay, so think about that a little bit. Again, there's lots of videos and information online about locus of control if you want to dig into it a little bit more, if you think that might be an issue. Now let's talk about different self-management strategies. Now this is basically a laundry list of different techniques that you can engage in to help to control your emotions. The situation that we're typically talking about here is, going through life, whether you're dealing with a relative or a spouse or a neighbor or a coworker, right? Going through life and coming across a situation where your emotions are triggered, right? Something makes you angry, something makes you upset, something makes you sad, right? Particularly anger, right? Anger and fear in particular. Something bothers you, and it threatens to take over your behavior, right? It threatens to overcome you and cause you to lose your temper and explode, or to just have this huge emotional release, right? So think about a situation like that, and then think about these different self-management strategies that you can engage in, right? So first of all is to breathe, right? Breathe correctly. I think we talked about this before, but breathing is a very effective ancient technique that you can use to calm yourself down. And basically, it involves just very deliberately just breathing in and out through your nose. Like that, just breathing and focusing on how it feels to go into your nose and how it feels to fill your lungs, and focusing on the feeling of getting that nice clean air into your body, right? If you do that for 30 seconds, a minute and a half, you're going to find over time that the better you do your breathing and the more you focus on it, it has a very calming effect on you. It's a very quick and easy, cheap way to calm yourself down a little bit. Another thing is to put together an emotion versus reason list, right? So basically, for any given situation that you might be faced with, right? Or let's say, for example, that you had a bad experience at work. So a coworker said something that you found, very insulting, and it got you really upset. Go back and think, okay, this is how it made me feel, right? And write it down. But then, what were the reasons, right? What were the reasons the coworker said what they said, and what were the reasons that it made you feel the way it felt? In other words, what were the thinking processes of the coworker, and what are some alternative thinking processes that you could have come up with to help you control that situation? What could you have thought or said to make it so that you didn't have that emotional reaction? Instead, you took control, right? Another one is to make your goals public. If you have a goal, any goal really, one of the things that helps a lot is to tell close friends and people you trust. They say, hey, I'm trying to do this. Whether it's weight loss, right? I have a goal, myself, of lowering my my A1C. The A1C is a measure of how much basically how much sugar you have in your blood, how much sugar you have bound to your hemoglobin, basically. And the lower that number, the better it is, right? So any number that's 5.9 or lower is considered non-diabetic. and I'm right at 6, so I'm trying to get it down to 5.9 or below. But that's a goal that I have, and I've let my family know that that's what I'm trying to do. And the reason you want to do that is because you want to tell people that you trust and that care about you, because they'll support you. Right, they will support you. They'll support you in any way they can, whether it's maybe praying for you or providing you resources or just kind of giving you a pat on the back and saying "attaboy." Those types of that type of self-management strategy is really effective to help you sort of stay on target and to help get other people to help you control your emotions. Count to 10. This is something that this is an old strategy, right? Whenever something triggers you and makes you upset, right? The first instinct is to just jump on it, right? And what did you mean by that? Just to jump all over it and get angry, get all up in somebody's face, right? Don't do that, right? Don't do that. Feel the emotion, but count to 10 slowly. Just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Just to yourself, right? 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And what you're going to find, is that your perspective changes. You're going to find that you're going to be slightly pulling yourself out of the control of that emotion. And you're not going to be as likely to react the way you would have emotionally, right? And as most of you probably know, usually the first person that loses their temper in an argument or a fight or a discussion loses, right? The first person that loses their temper loses. So you don't want to be that first person, right? You want to be the one that's calm, cool, and collected, right? Sleep on it. This is a big one, right? If you have a big decision to make and it involves a lot of factors, including emotional factors, don't make that decision quickly and rashly, right? You might be, emotionally bound somehow to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and tell this girl I just met that I'm going to marry her. Or, I'm going to go ahead and go $60,000 debt to buy this car, right? Because emotionally you're feeling like I'm in love, or, I've been really stressed out and I deserve this car, right? Those might be some emotional decisions that could end up costing you dearly in the future. So if you're ever faced with a decision that involves that has a lot of emotional components to it, and most decisions do, right? I mean, most decisions that you're going to make in your life have a reason component with, pros and cons that you can define, but they also have an emotional component, things that you like and things that you dislike, right? Don't make those decisions based solely on an emotional component. Sleep on it. Let your brain sort of like ruminate on it, and once you've had a good sleep and you're awake, you're refreshed, you're kind of away from the emotional environment of that decision, then you can make a clearer decision, right? You can make it one that's based less on emotion and more on good reasons, right? Talk to somebody who's a skilled self-manager. If you happen to know, if you're lucky and you happen to know a fighter pilot or a test pilot, they're like number one, right? But really, there's people out there that that you can probably separate into real neurotic people that have very high and low emotional valleys and peaks, and then there's people that that are just calm, cool, and collected, right? Find those people that are calm, cool, and collected in the face of everything. Find those folks and talk to them. Say, hey, how do you do it, right? How do you do it? Do you have any tips for me? Do you have any pointers for me? Some of them may not, right? Some of them just like, well, it's just part of my personality. I just always do it. I don't, But what'll happen is if they tell you that, then what that means is that you need to give them more specific. So you need to give them a very specific situation. So, I was talking to my wife and she said this, and I thought that was a really mean thing to say. So I got angry at her, and we started fighting because I got angry and then she got angry. What would you do in that situation? And if you give them a specific situation, they will be more likely to give you a better answer, right? So this is a good way to develop a mentor-mentee relationship with somebody, right? So find somebody that you understand has a good self-management ability, and you get their advice on certain situations, right? Smile and laugh more. Believe it or not, this makes a huge difference in your outlook. If you smile and laugh more, then you're going to feel better about yourself, and you're going to make people around you feel better being around you. And that right there is going to help tremendously with managing your emotions. Just, the fact that everybody's in a good mood and everybody's happy because you're happy and everybody else is happy, it does a lot, right? Imagine being in that situation versus being in a situation where everybody hates each other and everybody's mad, right? That would suck. You'll feel like you're walking on eggshells, and the slightest thing you say is going to offend people, and that's a terrible place to be. But if you can start by just smiling and being more cheerful, that'll spread, and it'll help keep you on an even strain, but it'll also help other people as well, be calmer around you, right? And then finally, set aside some time in the day for problem solving. This relates back to something that everybody should be doing. Now, I've mentioned to you guys many, many times that one of the things that really helps with self-improvement, any self-improvement, not just emotional intelligence, but literally anything, is keeping a journal, right? Keeping a journal of what you're doing. And one of the things that you want to do with that journal is to do a daily reflection. Basically, go through the journal, find out what worked and what didn't work, and then kind of give yourself a pat on the back for the things that did work, and make a plan to fix the things that didn't work, right? So keep a journal about some interactions that happened during the day, and at the end of the day, go back and look at your journal and figure out what worked and what didn't work. There's a very ancient practice that has been done for hundreds and hundreds of years by Catholics, and I do it every night. It's called the examination of conscience. And that's basically where you kind of just go through your day. You say, and you kind of go, okay, well, did I live up to my standards of behavior throughout the day, right? Did I manifest the virtues that Jesus would want me to manifest? Did I, obey all the 10 Commandments? Did I, obey all the precepts of the Catholic Church? You kind of just go through and say, yeah, I did pretty good here. I kind of, I said something to somebody I shouldn't have said. That was a mean thing to say, so, maybe next time you want to make sure you don't talk like that, or maybe even apologize to the person. But every night, you go through and do an examination of conscience, and document what was good and what was bad about the day in terms of like your reactions and what other people reacted to, and how you behaved. Again, like all the topics in this course, if you go to YouTube or Google and just type in examination of conscience, you will find tons and tons of resources that will help you to do that will help you to start doing this. It's not hard at all. You can 5 or 10 minutes at night, just to kind of go through and do it. And the more you do it, the easier it gets. So definitely look into that as a way to sort of further develop your self-management strategies. Um, Overall, the the whole act of self management really boils down to uh, understanding and recognizing your emotions, right? Understanding and recognizing your emotions in order to make better choices in responding to them. And the only way to do that is to put some time and energy into uh, honestly analyzing the events that happen around you, the things that happen to you, and how you respond to them. That's the only way. There's no other way to do it. Just being honest with yourself and documenting what happens when and understanding why you had an the emotional response that you did, and then using that record of what happened to you and your response to it to make better choices in responding to them. Okay, so recognize your emotions, document them, understand where they came from, and then use some of these self-management strategies on this list here to help you make and deal with them in a better way. Maintain an even strain. That is a quote. That's a saying that the Project Mercury astronauts came up with. So Project Mercury was the one of the precursors to the Apollo project that I talked about before from the movie clip that we saw. Project Mercury was the first major space project that the U.S. put together, and they put together they eventually selected 7 astronauts to be the Mercury 7, and these 7 guys became like super famous in the United States. And uh, there's a movie and there's a book and a movie called The Right Stuff that tells the story of the Project Mercury astronauts. It's another great movie that's mostly historically accurate. It's got a few weird oddities to it, but it's mostly historically accurate. But it's a great movie that talks about what these guys had to go through and what they went through. But one of the things that they would say, one of these phrases that they had was to maintain an even strain, and that's a phrase that comes from aeronautics, where you want to maintain the stresses and strains on your airplane or your ship or your craft evenly, so that it doesn't twist and break, right? And what it meant whenever it was used by in about humans, about people, it meant to maintain composure and show no fear or weakness. And this is what these guys did. Basically, these 7 astronauts, part of the reason they were chosen was because of the fact that they showed no fear in very stressful situations. And it's something that they were excellent at, and because they were all either fighter pilots or test pilots, and they were very good fighter pilots and very good test pilots, and they were just very fearless men. Now, they weren't born like that, right? These guys got a lot of training, an enormous amount of training, at the taxpayers' expense, of course, but it worked out good for the U.S. This is a skill that you can develop, maintaining an even strain, right? Maintaining composure. This is something you can develop. Even if you're a real hothead right now, you can actually develop this so that if you apply these self-management strategies that we talked about before, you can actually apply these to where you will you can reduce your emotionality, you can reduce your neuroticism, your tendency to fluctuate between emotions. Now, are you going to be as calm and cool and collected as a fighter pilot or a test pilot? Probably not, right? But you're going to be better than you are now, right? The U.S. Air Force Test Pilot School at Edwards Air Force Base, where I've been for one of my previous jobs, but at this test pilot school, they emphasize that test pilots are made, not born. So test pilots are trained, right? You obviously have to have a certain set of core, abilities, right? Most test pilots are, naturally very intelligent and very trainable. But they do have certain personality characteristics that help them to become very, very calm under pressure, right? But they're trained that way, right? In terms of strategies, right? In terms of your strategies, one of the things that you want to do, again, do a review, right? Do a review. If you want to be that person that maintains an even strain across all situations, you got to document those situations and figure out, how can I do better in this particular situation. The other thing you can do is take control of your self-talk. We are very much the people that we say we are. So if you go around telling yourself that, oh, I'll never learn this, and I'll never be, my self-management sucks and I'll never be able to do it. Well, that's going to be true, right? You're not going to do well at all. You have to tell yourself that you can do this. You have to talk. You have to have a set of affirmations that help you to understand that you're able to do this. Visualize yourself succeeding. So, put yourself in these situations. Visualize yourself doing what you want to do, what you're trying to train yourself for. The more you visualize yourself doing that, the more you're likely to do it as you get in each situation. Clean up your sleep hygiene. This is a big one. Most people don't get enough sleep. And if you don't get enough sleep, you're going to be grouchy and you're going to be more susceptible to emotional control because of the fact that reason, the logical reason part of your brain requires a lot of energy and a lot of attention. If you're sleepy, you're not going to have enough energy to focus attention on being reasonable. And so that's going to allow the emotional part of your brain to take over and to lead you to make more emotion-based decisions as opposed to reason-based decisions. So clean up your sleep hygiene. Make sure, go to bed early, get 7 or 8 hours of sleep, turn off the lights, don't, get off of the screens. Quit looking at screens so late. There's a lot of things that you can do to improve your sleep. Again, there's, lots of things you can find online that will help you to improve your sleep. Focus your attention on your freedoms instead of limitations. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit more about this at the bottom here, but basically, we all have freedoms and we all have limitations, right? There's things that we wish we could do but we can't, and there's things that we're very blessed to be able to do. Focus on the things you can do. Focus on the things you're able to do and that you're allowed to do. Don't focus so much on the things you can't do, because more often than not, there's nothing you can do with it. Stay synchronized. Basically, what this means is to make sure that you're in sync with your environment. Make sure you're in sync with all the things you have to do. Make sure you're in sync with the people around you. Don't let things fall through the cracks. Don't let your schedule get out of whack. Stay synchronized. Speak to someone that is not emotionally invested in your problems. This is a really big one. If you can find somebody you trust, that is kind of a neutral party, they can provide a lot of third-party, reasonable, non-emotional advice to you, right? I have personally found this to be very useful myself. If I've got some issue, for example, where, I just feel like, that for some reason or another the world is crapping all over me, right? And I just feel real bad about it. And usually what happens is I'll talk to people about it, and their view of it is completely different. It's basically like, what are you complaining about, basically? And that has helped me a lot over the years to deal with sometimes the things that come up in my life. Learn a valuable lesson from everyone you encounter. Everyone, every single person you encounter can teach you something. It doesn't matter how, what they do or how low they are, how high they are. Everybody you encounter can teach you something about yourself. Put a mental recharge into your schedule, right? So, go out and take a 30-minute walk. Take some time for prayer and reflection. Make sure to drink, take a break away from the screen, drink plenty of water, put into your schedule some time to basically just get away, disconnect, and recharge your batteries, right? Ultimately, self-management relies on the virtue of hope, right? Because why are you self-managing, right? If you have no hope for the future, if you have no hope for your future life, then, why bother? Right? Why bother? Hope is a very, very big, in my opinion, a very big component of all of this. There's a very, very famous, excellent book that was written by a man named Viktor Frankl. And the book was called Man's Search for Meaning, where he talks about having hope and how that kept him alive. Now, Dr. Frankl was a Jew. He was a Jewish psychiatrist. And he was a Jew in Nazi Germany. And he ended up in the Auschwitz concentration camp. And basically, as a psychiatrist, he was, helping fellow inmates to deal with their misery and their depression. Think about how horrible that is, to be in the Auschwitz, probably the worst place you can be other than hell, right? Is, Auschwitz as an inmate. And because, it was a slave, part of Auschwitz was a slave labor camp, and that's where Frankl was. And the other part of Auschwitz was the death camp, where they would just murder thousands of people a day. It was a very horrible place to be. But in spite of all of that, Frankl wrote that when he was in Auschwitz, he had hope. He basically would focus on the things he could control. He said the guards could not take away his hope and his purpose for living. And he survived that and wrote, and his experience in Auschwitz was the basis of this book, Man's Search for Meaning. And he found a lot of meaning in hope and in life by suffering at Auschwitz. So, if Viktor Frankl can be in Auschwitz and find hope, then you can certainly find hope in your life, right? That's basically the lesson there. But I would strongly recommend that you read this book. It's a great book. If you don't want to read the book, then at least, look at the Wikipedia page or something on it. But it's an excellent book. And then finally, by now you should know that one of the important things that you should be doing is, aside from journaling, which, I'm not going to make you do, but you should be doing it. It helps. The other thing too is to get support from others, right? Talk to other people, because self-management is ultimately about, being able to control yourself in the presence of others, right? In the presence of what other people can do to you and say to you. So, make sure that you engage with other people to help you to on your journey toward better and better emotional intelligence. Self-awareness, as I mentioned before, is the core component of emotional intelligence, self-awareness. But then after self-awareness comes self-management, right? Because you might have self-awareness, right? In other words, you might be aware of the things that are challenging for you, that you might have that might be problems for you. You could be perfectly aware of all the effects you're having on people. But if you don't have self-management, what good is it going to do if you're not able to manage your own, learn how to manage your emotions, right? So getting support from other people is key. Basically you can't do this without support from other people. You need support from other people. So, to the extent that you need it, seek out support from other folks, mentors, trusted friends and relatives, whatever you need, right? That's about it. Go ahead and finish your assignments in Canvas, and I will see you guys next week. Take care.